Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing this morning? Nice to have you all here. My name is Lauren Dickinson, and I'm here with a friend this morning from Togo. So I have been to Togo before. I was there in the summer of 2010 for about 7 weeks, and so some of the clothing that you see around is things that I brought back with me, and if you're interested, I have a few more items over here that you're welcome to look at. So I'm not going to talk about Togo because my friend Abalo is here, and he can do it much better than I can. So Abalo Assi is here as a Humphrey Fellow at the University of Minnesota. He works in the police force, the director of the police academy in Lomé, the capital of Togo, and he's here studying human rights with the Humphrey School for about 10 months. And we had the pleasure of meeting about a month ago, and he came and was with us last week at church and is interested in being part of the community in Minnesota here for the next few months while he's here. His wife and son just arrived yesterday, but unfortunately we don't have a car seat for a 2-year-old, so they couldn't join us this morning. So if you know anyone with a car seat for a 2-year-old that we could borrow for about a month, then hopefully we can see them next month, or next week, sorry. So I will pass it over to Abalo, and he can introduce you to his country.
Thank you, Lauren. As she said, yes, fortunately we met during one of my presentations. And yes, I'm from Togo. I'm Togolese. Police officer back home, but here in the United States, I'm student. I'm here by a program called Humphrey Fellowship Program. And the founder of the program is the former Vice President Hubert Humphrey. So it's a program that brings many professionals from all around the world in the United States to get the opportunity to know better what you have, what your culture, and everything you can share with others all around the world. And for this year, 2014-2015, we are 171 professionals brought in the United States, dispatched in 16 different universities. And at the University of Minnesota Human Rights Center, we are 13 from 12 different countries. Now to come back to Togo, it's just a small country. Do you have that? Yeah. And we used to say, when we are joking, we say our country is like a finger, very small, because it looks like that. So
You can pass that.
yeah, it's about 32 miles wide and 372 miles long. So very small country. But the exact size is not this, because by 1884, Togo was bigger than it is today, because at that time when Germany colonized Togoland, because at that time it was called Togoland, it was bigger. But during the First World War, so 1914 to 1919, so Germany has been fought by France and England, and then Togo has been shared in 2 parts, one side for France and another side for England. Unfortunately, during 1920 to 1960, when Togo should get its independence, those people living in that side for England, they decide to stay with another colony called, at that time, Gold Coast, and today is Ghana, our neighboring country. So, unfortunately, this Togo, Republic of Togo, is the part for France. That's why it's smaller than it was by 1884. So this is the background history. And then I'll not talk so long, but if you have questions for me, yes. But I will not stop without saying I'm very thankful to all of you for what you are doing to help Togolese you have never met. Maybe some of you don't know Togo. She has known Togo, but you are doing your best to help people you don't know. God bless you. God bless you. And thank you so much.
To continue on the Togo theme, well, first of all, some of us are wearing some interesting clothing. We'll talk more about that later. I just want now to point out, this is not Togolese. It's a Ugandan shirt brought back by our son Sean when he spent some time in East Africa. And the reason we're speaking today is that he's now in West Africa, he's in Togo, working with the Peace Corps. And he's working on a project which will take a while. There's a picture of him right there. He went over in June, and he'll be there for 27 months working on a project that he'll define while he's there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And that project, which is emerging right now, has been supported by the MSJ committee, the Mission Social Justice Committee here. So he's very grateful, and we're very grateful for that support, and for that reason we're here to kind of let you in on what he's got in mind for his time there in Togo. Okay, correct me. What was it? The mission team did that. Okay, Cheryl will get it right. I'm just doing what I think is right, but anyway.
We even wrote out the notes.
Yeah. So he flew over there as part of a Peace Corps team of people that went over together, and they did an intensive 3-month training there to kind of learn how to make sure they can filter and treat water, and how to be aware of the culture that they're entering, and how to speak some of the language that they'll encounter, and just different kind of things like that. And this is his group, and after 3 months they graduated, and they were dispersed throughout the country to work separately in different places. They call it at site. That means in a little village. Everybody's kind of on their own in their own little village. And let me get your name right. It's Abalo talked about Togo being very small. Well, here's a picture off of Google Earth of all of Africa, and it gives you a little context about where we're talking. Where Sean had been earlier for a couple of summers was in Uganda, and the size of this continent of Africa is amazing. We think of it as, some people even say, the country of Africa. Well, that's not correct. It's a giant continent. 9-hour flight, 5,000 kilometers, just within Africa between where he worked before and where he's working now. And on the right is a blow-up of Togo itself. That's the keychain. And Lomé is the capital in the south. And Sean's village is Dagma, or Dangma, we're not sure how it's spelled, but in the north. You can read the notes here. It's a tropical setting, but there's 2 or 3 distinct seasons. And it's always hot. It's always 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit or even more. And it kind of changes from being dry to being wet. And we heard a little bit about it was a French colony. These are just some like little factoids, but relevant to what Sean is going to work on. 40% of people have unimproved drinking water, and that can mean anything you can imagine. It's just not water coming safely out of a tap whenever you want. It's something different than that, and that means that the risk of infectious disease is very high. Over 7 million people, that's a little bit more than Minnesota. 37 tribes. Life expectancy is listed there, median age, 4.5 kids per woman on average. The economy is based on several things, but mostly agriculture, a lot of phosphate mining, and I think that goes into soap and fertilizer. And the gross domestic product per capita is $1,100. As context, in the US, our similar figure is $53,000. So it's a real difference. Is this where you'd like to jump in, Cheryl? Or is it?
Okay.
This is the microphone.
So we just have some pictures about, let me see, the people. There's a high unemployment rate, at least in Sean's village. It's a Muslim village. It's a very poor village. And Jim, you're going to have to click for me. Sorry. And Sean, all right. Sean at first was really nervous about being in a Muslim village, because then he thought the culture will be so different, and he just didn't know what to expect. But it turns out that he likes his village. It's very, the men don't drink, there's no crime, he feels very safe, and so he's appreciates, even though it's very different. He's woken up every morning to the call to prayer, or call to Mecca at 4:30, so then he goes to bed at night at 8:30. It's just the whole lifestyle is very different. So these are some pictures of the landscape. It's kind of this mix of tropical and then very dry. Like right now it's very dry, it's the dry season, and it's just dusty, dry, wind blowing the dust around all the time. These are some pictures of the kind of the village life. For the women, they cook outdoors, and Sean was just telling us yesterday a big source of social interaction for the women is going to the well. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, about trying to put a new well in. It has to be in the center of town, because that's what the women do. They come together and talk about gossip, talk about the village, and they won't want to walk very far to get the water.
All these photos are Sean's photos too.
Yeah.
These are his photos.
Yeah, and and
People he knows.
obviously we don't know what we're talking about. We're just telling you what he's told us. But so here, this is the village chief, and in this picture, he's dressed up because it's a sanitation day. He's declared a sanitation event, and so he's gathering all the men in the village, and they're going to clean up the village. And the guy on the left is beating the drum, and you can see him in the background. So he's kind of keeping time for them all, and they're picking up, I think it's mainly trash is really what the sanitation is. So these are just some pictures of the village. It's kind of set up, I guess, it's a village of 800, but they're in little compounds, and it's kind of communities within the village. And so this is near where Sean lives. This was, I don't know what the festival was.
The Muslims.
Yeah.
Praying.
Well, there was some Muslim festival.
Ramadan and Tabaski.
I think it was that one. Yeah. So these are pictures Sean took from this festival. They're all dressed up. You can see the great colors. Sean's looking a little ill there. Actually, to be honest, he's been ill most of the time he's been in Togo. But he was particularly ill this day because he did a lot of goat slaughtering. And he just wasn't used to it.
He had to take a break after.
He had to take a break.
It was pretty graphic.
So, and Sean said that it's a big celebration, and they use all parts of the goat. Everything is used. And that he said a little kid was walking down the road, blowing up the lungs of the goat and playing with it like it was a balloon. And this is his really good friend, how do you say his name? Sadamba, on the left. And he is what they call Sean's counterpart. Every Peace Corps volunteer has to have somebody in the village that is going to work on the project with them. And so I can't say his name. Sadamba is the same age as Sean. He's unemployed. He wanted to go to university and was going, and then his mother got sick, and he had to come home, and the money had to go towards her medicine. But his hope is to go back to the university. And this, the Peace Corps, the main way they get around is these motorbikes. And that's when Sean travels to Lomé or travels for training for Peace Corps, it's always on these motorbikes. And the Peace Corps issues you a serious helmet, and you have to wear it. That's like, one of their rules. You have to wear it because it's, I think, the number one killer is the car accidents. But if you're traveling farther, then you get into these taxis.
The bush taxi.
Bush taxi, and they're really crowded, apparently. And I think you can kind of see they look sort of crammed in there. Sure. And I think, I was going to say, excuse me, that woman on the right is his host mother. and
Host mother.
host mother. So I think when he first arrived, they would invite him over for dinner and help get him acclimated to the village.
Did you want to mention about her kids?
So he's very close to his host family. And one time when we were talking to Sean on the phone, he was really upset, kind of angry. And that past weekend, her little boy had died. And this was a little boy that would come over and visit every morning, come to his hut and play. And, she just, I don't know what it, let's say his name's Benji. She just came over and told him, Benji didn't make it. And the lack of clean water is a huge factor for has the biggest impact on the children. So here's some pictures of kids. He's got some great photos of the kids.
We should mention too that there's several reasons why this is just a subset of the kind of photos he could get. He's afraid to bring his camera out a lot because that really kind of emphasizes the differences between people. So he has to kind of choose when to take photos. And even if he does take photos, the internet service is so undependable that it's really takes 10 or 15 minutes to upload each photo, and then you lose the connection. And so we're working with what he's got, but there's some really good pictures that he got.
So the top picture is at the market, kids at the market. Yeah, I don't know. It looks. Corn? Is it corn? Yeah, okay. So here's the market. It's in, there's not a market in the town in Dagma where the village Sean's in, so he has to walk to Chamba, which is what, 2 kilometers. So he'll walk, he'll go on Sunday, like probably today, he would go to the market and get his food for the week. But if he gets vegetables, they only last like 2 days because there's no refrigeration and they spoil. And there's ants, yeah. But he'll go to the market, and a friend of his is in a village north of there, so sometimes they would meet, on Sunday, so he could speak English with somebody else. This is the, well, they speak a mixture of French, Arabic, and then Chamba. And so he's kind of learning it all from there's a couple guys in the village that are 23 and they're teaching him, but it's this mixture. If you went to France, they probably wouldn't know what he was saying because it's this mixture of Arabic, whatever word they tell him it is. So when we hear him on the phone, it's sort of a odd French, because people are always talking to him. It's always noisy. So even when we're talking to him, people are saying hi, our kids are saying hi. One time we were talking to him on the phone, and he was walking back from the market, and the school had gotten out, and hundreds of kids were on the road, and we could just hear all this Arabic and all this. They're all like,
Shouts at people.
Yeah. So they're very friendly. All right, and then
The 2 guys that are his age will come around because they don't have jobs, and Sean has some downtime during the day, so they'll show up and they want to learn. They're keen to learn English, so they want to kind of talk with him, and he wants to learn what they're speaking. And we've sent him Time magazines, and he loves to get political literature that's current in the U.S. And he'll assign them something to read, and then they'll come back the next day having read it, and they'll discuss it. So they do a little political sell-on, I guess.
so this is the market. Some more photos. Yeah, it's very colorful. So he was, once a month, women from neighboring villages come in to Dagma. There's a clinic. It's kind of like a clinic, and they come in for vaccination for their kids. And that's one of the projects Sean wants to work on, is building latrines at this building because there's no latrines. But you'll see there's pictures. These kids are coming in, they line up. So the moms are bringing little kids, all ages. And this little girl looks like she's watching her brother get his shot. He had some really sad photos of kids crying, but we don't have them. This one's happy.
We don't know if this is before or after.
The shot.
Maybe he's happy that his little brother's getting it this time.
Not him, yeah. So, Sean has, well, we have a bunch of pictures, but we have this picture of his dog, because right when he was in training, someone they knew's dog was having a litter of 10 puppies. So 10 Peace Corps volunteers each took a puppy. And this is Sean's puppy. And it's really been a blessing. Ike. Ike thinks he's a goat because apparently in Sean's village, they think it's very odd to have a pet. You would not have a pet dog, and you certainly wouldn't waste your food on the pet dog. So
we send him Cliff Bars for him. He ends up sharing his Cliff Bars with the dog.
So anyway, but Ike, there's not a lot of other pet dogs, so he hangs out with the goats. And I think he thinks he's a goat, but
the goats hate him.
Yeah, the goats hate him because he chases them, and
he rides on their backs and stuff like that.
But he's very excited to see Sean. He's very devoted to Sean, so he's been a blessing. These are those two on either side of Sean are the two young men that are his age that he spends a lot of time with. And the guy in the white shirt is his really good friend. I think this is his friend's mother there, and it's another guy. So for a while, Sean's hair got really long, and it was really hard to keep clean. So then he shaved his head, and he looked like a thug. But he said it was just easier. So.
Okay. So now we're wrapping up, with slides. So I'm going to just talk for a minute about what his project actually is. And it's got 3 parts. And we're not sure exactly how it's going to unfold because he can't predict. But his plan is to first work on something that's easy and effective. So that would be trying to buy some latrines and get them installed. Cheryl mentioned like at the clinic and at the school. And that's really important because the technical term really is open defecation. There's not any plumbing. There's not any central area where people, keep all that activity away from the water source. There's animals running around. You can see goats in this picture and chickens and things. And this well is very old and in disrepair, but at least it's covered. And it does have some features that are somewhat protective of the water source. But in general, it's really difficult to keep clean when there's this pattern of open defecation going on in animals. So the second stage of his project will be to try to work on that, which is called wellhead protection. And that's actually what I do for Minnesota at the Minnesota Health Department. So it's really cool that he is interested to do a project, and there's a need for a project that has a lot to do with something that I know about. So we're in constant communication about that. And then the third part of the project, which will be the most expensive and the most difficult, will be hopefully to line up a way to drill a new well or two for the little village, because they've got, he's not even sure, but I think they've got 4 or 5 wells. I always thought it was 4. Yesterday he was talking about 5 wells, mostly like this, in disrepair and in the center of town, and all but one of them dry up for half the year. So right now there's only 1 well with water in it. Luckily, that's a well that has fairly good quality water because he tested for nitrate and told me what it was. It's got 2 milligrams per liter nitrate, which is kind of an indicator of other contaminants that might be present. In Minnesota, we would say if you're above 10, that's a problem. So this is actually really good. But I think for the wells in the middle of town like this one, where there's more pressure on them from activity around the well, we don't know, but I think those would be worse quality water. So there's some things to work on. And all of this is not Sean or me or anyone from Minnesota swooping in and telling them what to do. All of this has been proposed by the chief, and we've seen him before. Very early in his time in Dagma, Sean was able to connect with the chief and talk over over the fufu and soup, I'm sure, they're eating there, and what kinds of things might be useful. And the chief proposed three things. He proposed latrines, and he proposed a new well, and he also proposed a clinic. Well, that would be really difficult. So that's kind of off the table, very expensive and hard to do. But the other things might be possible. Now, the chief looks a little bit, we don't know his name. All we know is he's the chief. He looks a little bit off here, a little bit sad. His wife had just died days before from malaria. So he's a little bit distracted, but that kind of underlined the importance of things. This slide shows the three aspects of his project. On the upper left are some latrines. They're just outhouse latrines. And there's two types. One is less expensive, which is more of a bare bones kind of approach, maybe about $200 a shot. But the better option might be a slightly more expensive type than is shown here, and it's called EcoSan latrines, and those are composting latrines, and so it actually produces something useful in the end that can be used on safely on crops. And they're solar powered. They do require a little bit of maintenance, but if you get something useful out of it, it's more likely to be sustainable in the long run. So that's what he's hoping for that short-term project. Phase 2 is on the right side, so that's a different one of the older wells in town. This one was, there's a different one that's similar that was put in by somebody from the United Arab Emirates. I'm not sure if this one was part of that project too. This well is, there's garbage all around it. It's near probably there's animals nearby. It's open to the environment. The base floor around it is pretty bad shape, and so this well not only probably dries up and becomes useless for part of the year, but it's probably got bad quality water when it does have water, and it's an open source of conduit for contaminants to go and make problems at other wells. Mosquitoes, yeah, right, exactly. So, or dangerous to fall into, children or animals, and that would foul up a water supply. I mean, the children would be a disaster, but having even a small animal going in there could cause a fecal coliform problem. So that's a bad deal, and so these kinds of things can be worked on fairly inexpensively and probably with a good benefit. And on the lower left is a well drilling rig. This is a mud rotary rig they're actually putting in, and I think I'm looking at this, and I know that it's very similar to the equipment used here for putting in wells. Here a crew would be about 2 or 3 people at most, and here I see 4 guys with hard hats, 1 other guy with level X or YZ health protection, and then a whole crowd of onlookers. So it's a very exciting thing, I think, when these kind of projects come to town. What I would propose here would be a cover on the well. It would be good to have it fenced off. I would say in Minnesota what we would do is we would do some computer groundwater flow modeling using all the information we have of water levels all around, rivers, lakes, geology, and use the mathematics to figure out where the water's flowing, and then you put pressure on it by pumping it, and then how does that make water flow to the well. We would protect everything up gradient that is a 10-year flow time. So falls as rain, 10 years later shows up at the well, that defines the area that we would say you can't do certain activities on the land surface. It's called the drinking water supply management area. Can't do anything like that here. We don't have any information. So in cases like that around here, we say, well, it's better to rope off 200-foot radius around the well and just watch what you do there. Like don't have goats, don't, a well like this one, this is the one that is wet all year round. It's got water all year round. It's got high quality water that we measured. There's another photo of it I should have dropped in instead of this one that shows that there's a spout. You can see there's a fence around it that, or a cement wall around it that might help limit animal traffic near the well. We would want to see, a wider area around the well where animals were kept out. The spout means that people are collecting water right at the wellhead and probably maybe washing dishes there, maybe washing themselves there. And that's really bad because that water cycles straight down and gets pumped right back out. And so it's like drinking bath water or worse. So that's the way to fix that, is to run a line out 200 feet or so where it can infiltrate there. You can do what you need to, and then it's going to get some filtration before it cycles back into the well. I do know something about the geology in general in these kinds of tropical settings underlain by crystalline bedrock. I do know that this is a type of a pump called a pitcher pump. You've seen them at parks and roadsides and stuff. they have what's called a suction limit of around 20 to 25 feet. So if this well works, I think it does, then it must be pumping water from no deeper than that depth. We know that soils in these areas are lateritic soils. They're tropical chemical weathering soils that are very impermeable. But there's heavy rains, and so that causes a lot of infiltration. The water's trying to find a permeable zone, which happens to be right above that crystalline bedrock. That's the most permeable area. Below that is very expensive drilling and very impermeable and not good prospecting for water. So there's this one place vertically to look for water. It's going to be dicey. I've done some work, and I'm not showing it here, but to try to figure out locally where the best bets would be based on some good soil mapping that a colleague of mine found. So I drew some circles on the map for Sean saying, drill here. And I'm hoping that something happens. I'm hoping that he can get it together. I'm hoping that those locations will work with the cultural constraints, that Cheryl talked about earlier. I'm hoping that they can find water there. So we're doing our best.
Can you go back to the slide right before?
Yeah. That one?
I just want to say, we were talking to Sean yesterday, and how it works at the Peace Corps is you have to write up a grant, and you have to say what you're doing, and then you have to get that project approved, and then you can put it up on their official Peace Corps website, and then you can fundraise. So the first thing he wants to do is the latrines, because that's what the village wants, and he has to kind of show that he can do a project, and the village says, oh yeah, he's actually going to do something for us. And so the Mission and Social Justice Committee has graciously donated like $3,500. So Sean what he wants to do is build the really nice latrines, the solar powered. They're $600, and he's hoping to build like 6 of them. And the village really wants them, so that would be his first project. Then if he's successful in that, then he would move on to covering the existing wells, doing the wellhead protection. So then he'd put up another grant proposal up on their website and hopefully do that. And then his last one, which he would hope to do by summer, would be about drilling the well. So there's...
Next year.
Pardon?
Not this summer, but...
Yeah, he would start to fundraise for it next summer. But the thing is, to do the really nice well, that's probably like $10,000. And there's just a lot of barriers to getting it to happen. So
One of the barriers is being white.
White, yeah. So when he negotiates, he feels like they're all telling him these higher prices, and the Peace Corps won't let you do a project over $10,000. They won't let you do it. All your projects have to be below that. So he's thinking now that if he can't do the really nice well, which was the last picture, he would just because that might cost $10,000, then he might just try to do a well, a less fancy well for $2,000.